Okay, note taken, Pat. Well, actually, you're going to do part of this on your own, okay? I'm going to do this side, you're going to do the other side. The other side's really easy to do, okay? Evaluate, okay? It says no, don't worry about the boxes thing. Okay, 8 to the negative third. Well, I know how to take 8 to the positive third. That's easy, but how do you take 8 to the negative third? Well, what you do is put a 1 over it, and then you can make it positive. So 1 over 8 times 8 times 8, 512. So it's not 512, it's 1 over it. So it's like what it would be if it's a positive 3, but then I just put a 1 over it. It's called reciprocating. So now I got 1/5, and then I can make that 2 a positive. So I take 5 times 5, 25. 1 over it, then I can make that 3 positive. 4 times 4 times 4, 64. Now, here's another little key thing. How do you do a 0 power? Anything to the power of 0. I don't care what that number is. It could be 5, 1,000, 2 million. Anything when raised to the 0 power is 1, okay? 3 to the negative second, okay? Make it positive, so now I can just take 3 times 3. I don't have to worry about that being a negative, so it's 1/9. 6 to the first is 6, so it's 1/6. Put a 1 over it, make it positive, and you don't make the 4 positive though, just the exponent. That 4 is still going to be negative. So I take negative 4 times negative 4, I get 16, so 1/16. And then here, I take 6 times 6 times 6, I got 216. Okay, pause the video, and you're going to do your assignment first, then we're going to come back and do some notes. 1 through 8, okay, real easy. All those have negative powers, your job is to evaluate. Okay, now with the note taking, you're going to simplify more complicated expressions with variables, you're going to make 3 lines, okay? Now, the top, you have x, it's to the 4th power. The bottom, you have x, it's to the negative 6th power. Now, you need to cross out the x on the bottom. And you put minus, and then you're going to minus negative 6. So just put minus negative 6. So take your calculator and go 4 minus negative 6. It's 10, because when you subtract a negative, it just makes 4 bigger. So again, look at that. You're still subtracting. You're just subtracting a negative. So that's 10. Okay, now, we need this middle line. We got to think a little bit, not really on this problem. I want you to circle the exponent. If that's a positive, you just bring the x to the 10th over. Okay? And then I can't simplify that. That's to the 10th. Okay? Now my next one. Now, if you don't see a line, you create your own line. Everything's on top to start with. So on top, you have a 10 times an x times a y. So 10's to the first, I take 1 times negative 2, that's negative 2. X is to the first, 1 times negative 2, negative 2. Y is to the first, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And there's nothing on bottom, so I'm not going to be able to cross anything out. Okay? Now I want you to circle all the little powers now. This has a negative, so you don't just bring it over. What you need to do is move it to the other side of the line, and now it can become a positive 2. This has a negative. Can't have a negative exponent. Move it to the other side of the line, and we can now have a positive. Negative, other side of the line, we now make a positive. Now, anytime you have nothing on the top, and you're going to evaluate this, okay? You can figure out 10 to the second. That would be 100. And then times the x to the second, times y to the second. Now, anytime you don't have anything on top, you need to put a 1. You can have the bottom, nothing on bottom, but when you have nothing on top, you need to put a 1. That's the answer. Okay, my next problem. if you don't see a line, we're going to write everything on top. So we have an A and a B. Don't write the same letter twice. Now we have two letters of A, okay? So we put a little plus sign when there are two of them. We write, before it we write 4, there's not a parentheses around it, so there we go. Then negative 10, and we add those. So when there's two factors like that, okay, we add. So negative 6, 4 plus negative 10. Then my B, there's two B factors. We have a negative 3. I put a plus sign first because I know I'm going to need that. And then 6. And now we add negative 3 plus 6. That's going to be 3. Okay, now we're ready to go to the next step. Circle your powers now. I know I hadn't had you do that before, but now you got to start paying attention. That's a negative, so don't just bring it over. You move it down here so that your A can now be a positive 6. This is a positive. If it's a positive, you just bring it over. And we can't do either one of those on a calculator. So B to the third, A to the sixth. Okay, now on the top we have a base 2 times an x. So 2 is to the first, not in a parentheses. And by the way, how many 2's do you have on top? Just 1, so don't write a plus sign like last problem. You just have a 1. There's x. How many x's do you have on top? Just 1. No plus, just a negative 3. Now bottom we have a y, only one of them, so I don't write a plus, and I just put negative 4. Now circle all of those powers. So let's talk about this one. Is it positive or negative? It's positive, you just bring it over. Same place it is. Is that negative or positive? That's negative, so don't bring it over. You bring it to the bottom, and I can now write it as positive 3. Those little negative numbers have to be made positive. Now how about this? It's negative, so we can't just bring it over. We're going to move it to the top, to the other side, so now I can make it positive. And then 2 to the first would be 2, y to the fourth, x to the third, done. Okay? You'll need practice on this, okay? So if I don't see a line, just put everything on top. So you have a 7, an x, and a y. How many 7's do you have? Just 1. I don't need the plus. I just need to find the power that goes there. So it's 1, but it's in parentheses. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. X, that is a negative 3. You only have this x, so no plus. Negative 3 times negative 2 is 6. Then for y, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. Okay, you're not going to have anything on the bottom for now. Now circle all your little powers. So that is a negative, okay? I don't just bring it over. I move it to the bottom, and then it goes to a positive 2. This has a positive, so I just bring it over. This has a negative, so don't just bring it over. You bring it to the bottom, and it goes positive 2. Okay, so I can find out what x 7 to the second is. I can take 7 times 7. That's 49 times y to the second. Okay, now what do we have here? We have a 7 times an x times a y times an 8 and an x. I already wrote x down, okay? So nothing's going to be on bottom because everything's going to be lined up on top and we don't have the line. So how many 7's do you have? Just 1, so I put the 1. 1 times 2 is 2. How many x's do you have? You have 2 of them, so you need to put a plus sign. So here's the first x, but that's in parentheses, so I need to multiply negative 2 times 2. So I'd have a negative 4 here, and then over here we'd have a 2. So then I add negative 4 plus 2, negative 2. That's what you do when there are two factors of the same base. Okay, you add their powers. Y, how many, and I cross out the x's. How many y factors do you have? Just 1. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. Then 8, you got a 1. Okay, not in parentheses though, so I just put a 1. Now look at all these little numbers we ended up with. That's a positive, so we just bring it over. That's a negative. We do not bring it over, we bring it to the bottom, so I can write it as a positive 2. That's a negative. We don't bring it over, we bring it to the bottom, so it's positive 6. Bring that to the, keep that on top. Now I can figure out these two. Okay, 7 to the second, that's 7 times 7, that's 49. 8 to the first is 8, and then these letters, just the variables, stay the way they are. I don't know what number they are, so remember to times 49 by 8. Okay, 392. There we have it. Okay, next problem. Remember, just extend the line. So you got top and bottom here. So let's look on top. We have a factor of 2, a factor of m, a factor of n, another factor of m. So again, I won't write it again. Now let's talk about 2. This is my only factor of 2. So 1 times 3 is 3. M, you have 2 factors of m. So we're going to have to add the exponents. What are the exponents? So that's a 1. 1 times 3 would be 3. And then I just have negative 8. So I take my calculator and I add 3 plus negative 8. This one's a tough one. Okay, you got to keep your head together. Negative 5. Okay. Now let's talk about the n. Just one of them. 1 times 3 is 3. We don't need to add. Now let's go to the bottom. We have m times n, and then there's another n. Okay, that's fine. So the m is to the negative third. This is the only m I have on bottom, so I just write down negative 3. Now the n, there's 2 of them, so I need to add. I need to take 6 plus 6, and that gives me 12. Okay, that is a 12. Now, when you have stuff on the bottom, you need to cross some things out. Okay, now I know we have a lot of stuff written already, but we still need to do the cross out, like with the m's and the n. Get rid of the m on the bottom. That was a negative 3, and you write minus negative 3. Negative 5 minus negative 3 is negative 2. So the m is negative 2. Okay, that was hard. First I had to add the m's together, then I had an m on bottom, so I crossed it out and subtracted it. Okay, now the n's. Okay, cross out the 12 on the bottom and just minus 12. Negative 9. Now circle all your little numbers. It's hard to see them, but you got to look. You got a 3. This ended up as a negative 2. Okay. This ended up as a negative 9. So that 3 is positive. We're just going to bring the 2 to the third over. This m is a negative power, so we don't bring it over. We bring it to the bottom, and the negative 2 turns into positive 2. And this n has a negative power, so we don't just bring it over. We bring it to the bottom, so the negative 9 turns to positive 9. Okay, then 2 to the third. Now we're home free. That was a pain. That was a hard problem. So we got 8 on top, and then m to the second times n to the ninth in the bottom. Okay, last problem, then we're going to call it a day. So if I don't see the line, everything's on top. So we have 5 times x times y. I already wrote 5 down. I already wrote x down, and I already wrote y down. Okay, so I'm good to go. Now, how many factors of 5 do we have? We have 2, so we have to add their powers. So 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. 1 times 2 is 2. Now, a funny thing happens. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. Okay, so just scribble that out and put 0. Okay. That takes care of our 5s. Now, how many factors of x do we have? We have 2 of them. So a plus needs to go here. So negative 4 times negative 2 is positive 8. Negative times a negative ends up as a positive. So I have 8. And then 1 times 2 is 2. So 8 plus 2 is 10. Takes care of my x's. Now the y. You also have two factors of y. So we put a plus sign. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. That's your first add-in. Then 1 times 2 is 2. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. Now here's all the little powers. 0, 10, negative 4. 0 is not negative, so I just bring the 5 to the 0 over. 10's not negative, I just bring the x to the 10th over. The y is a negative power, so we don't bring it over. We move it to the bottom where it becomes 4. Okay? Now I can figure out 5 to the 0 power. Remember that first thing I had you do today. Anything to the 0 power is 1. It's 1. Okay? And that's all she wrote on that one.